Hey guys, tonight we fade into Edo. The city is thick with mist and the sticky echo of summer. You're walking barefoot on worn planks, past lanterns swinging from bent iron hooks, past men laughing too loudly from sei, past the cough of a street vendor who's been selling roasted yams for 30 years and never once smiled while doing it. You're in Edo, what they'll one day call Tokyo, but tonight it's just home. A maze of alleyways, incense smoke, and the gentle rumble of a city too proud to sleep. You're on your way to meet a woman no one talks about. Or if they do, they call her Hokusai's daughter, which is a bit like calling the moon the sun's shadow. Her name is Oei Katsushika, and tonight she might let you inside her story. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? I'd love to know. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the edge of Sumida River. It's quiet here. The water slaps gently at the banks. You hear frogs, the clink of a fishing bell, and the low creak of wood as a boat drifts lazily by. And then, a cough. It's an old man, hunched and half-shadowed beneath a paper lantern painted with a crude dragon. His hair is wild, eyebrows like wisps of ink. This is Hokusai. They say the man who drew Mount Fuji into legend, who painted demons with too many fingers, who chased perfection so far he forgot to eat. But tonight's not about him. You look past him, to the door that slides open behind him with a whisper, and there she is, Oei, ink on her sleeves, soot on her cheek, eyes like obsidian cut by candlelight. She doesn't bow. She doesn't smile. She just nods, steps aside, and lets you in. Inside, it smells like boiled rice, wet dog, and turpentine. Sheets of half-finished drawings are pinned to the walls with fish bones and rusted tacks. You nearly trip over a discarded print of a thunder god in red robes, smudged and torn. There's only one meal on the table, and it isn't yours. You don't ask questions. You just sit. She sits opposite. Her knees crack slightly as she does. Outside, the lantern flutters. Inside, she begins to speak. Not aloud, her lips don't move, but her life leaks out in small, invisible waves. You feel it settle into your skin. She tells you of her first brush, carved from bamboo, stiff and cheap, of practicing on discarded rice wrappers, of copying her father's dragons, over and over, until her fingers cramped and bled. She tells you how it felt to live as a ghost beside a legend, every compliment directed over her shoulder, every coin tossed into her father's bowl while she inked quietly behind the curtain. It wasn't hate, it wasn't love, it was something harder, a sticky blend of loyalty and rage, the kind of emotion you can't translate into words, so you paint it instead, over and over, until your soul feels clean again. Outside, thunder rolls softly. Rain begins its dance across the roof. She stares at you, then past you, as if watching something in the shadows. Perhaps a memory. Perhaps something she never told even herself. You probably won't survive this. She doesn't say, but her eyes do. Not because of swords or storms, but because the silence of a forgotten woman can drown you quicker than any tide. And just like that, the room grows still. Time, uninvited, slows to a yawn. You lean back, eyes tracing the bamboo ink rack, the oil paper windows, the corner where a spider quietly spins a masterpiece no one will ever sign. The night outside thickens. You smell wet earth and oil lamps. The city holds its breath. And you sit waiting, listening. Because tonight, Oei Katsushika is ready to speak. And the world, for once, is quiet enough to hear her. You wake into her world the next morning with the sun not yet risen, and the floor beneath you cold. She's already up Oei, kneeling on a cushion with a brush in hand, and eyes narrowed in that particular way that means she's been working since before the birds began chirping. Her sleeves are pushed up. The back of her hand has a small ink smear, a mark that's been there since yesterday or the day before or maybe last year. You're not sure she notices anymore. The house is quiet except for the occasional wet cough from Hokusai's sleeping mat in the next room. That, and the scratch of brush against paper, a dry whisper, almost like wind or skin. There's rice in the pot, but not enough for two. You pretend you're not hungry, and she pretends you didn't notice. Instead, you sit, you observe. This morning's piece is a ghost long fingers, eyes that take up too much space, hair coiling like black smoke. But the ghost isn't terrifying, it's lonely, lurking in the paper like it forgot it had somewhere else to be. Commissions, she finally says, not looking up. They want ghosts this week, or kabuki stars, or courtesans with hips too wide to walk. She says it flat, like she's describing a misaligned plank or a half-dead radish. Not resentful, not amused, just tired. The door creaks. Hokusai enters in a storm of coughs and complaints. He complains about the humidity, about the cat knocking over ink, about Oei using the wrong damn red for the lady's sleeves. He doesn't thank her for painting half the previous week's prints while he napped in a vinegar haze. You watch as she listens, nods, corrects one line on the ghost's wrist. Her father, the great Hokusai, huffs and stumbles back to his mat, grumbling something about Fuji being too quiet today. When he's gone, she lets out the smallest exhale, not relief, just space. You learn quickly this is their rhythm. She paints, he barks, she shadows his fame, he pretends she isn't there. Yet, when the money comes in coin by coin from buyers who think they're buying his hands, his soul he spends half of it on pickled plums for her. A strange kind of affection, crooked and half-dried, like seaweed pressed in an old book. You go out that afternoon, you have to. Oei needs ink, and rice, and to avoid her father's hacking for a while. The streets of Edo are slippery from last night's rain. You pass a print shop with Hokusai's name plastered on a red banner outside. Inside, an apprentice is sloppily pressing a new run of The Great Wave. The blue's too light. The foam looks like angry cotton. You wonder how many of these did Oei finish, or fix or invent entirely. No one mentions her, not the carvers, not the buyers, not even the old woman sweeping the storefront who once held Oei when she had a fever at age 6. You visit the ink seller. He knows her by name, Katsushika Oei, but still asks if she's working with the old man again. As if she's an apprentice. As if she didn't ghost draw half the monsters now framed in Kyoto tea rooms. You return just before sunset. The ghost is finished. It looks nothing like it did this morning. Now it's floating, half dissolved into the paper, its sadness sharpened, its eyes deeper, the kind of ghost you'd let into your house if it promised to never speak. She looks at you. Do you think this one is mine? You don't answer right away, because you know what she means. She's not asking if she painted it. She knows that. She's asking if her soul made it into the paper, if her ghost finally escaped. Later that night, as frogs sing under the moon, and the scent of plum wine curls in through the slats, she hides the ghost beneath a stack of Hokusai's prints. Tomorrow, they'll sell for 10 coins apiece, all signed by a man who didn't paint them. But she'll still buy sardines with the money. She'll still draw again tomorrow. And you still watching, still quiet, will start to wonder how many geniuses history misplaced while we weren't looking. You sleep lightly that night, half dreaming of koi fish that whisper secrets and ghosts with too many fingers. When you wake, Oei is gone. Not gone, exactly just not here. Her shoes are missing, and the leftover rice is cold and congealed. There's a single brush drying on the rack and a slip of paper weighted by a river stone. It simply reads back later, "Feed the cat. Don't touch the red ink." You don't touch the red ink. Instead, you open the window and watch Edo stir itself into motion. The streets yawn. A monk sweeps ash from the temple gate. A man with a bucket of squid passes by, humming an off-key tune about spring. Life continues. Hokusai, in the next room, mutters something about dragons and paintbrushes the size of brooms. You're not sure if he's awake or dreaming. It's nearly noon before she returns. Wind-tossed hair, sandals dusty, one eye slightly more tired than the other. She drops a wrapped bundle on the floor and begins untying it without a word. Inside, 3 finished prints, one of a ghost woman combing her hair with a rib cage, one of a temple gate swallowed by mist, and one of a samurai holding a mirror that reflects a fox. All of them signed Hokusai. You raise an eyebrow, she shrugs. They want his name, she mutters, but they want my ghosts. That night the client arrives. He's tall, thin, lacquered with perfume. His sleeves are so long they drag on the floor. He wears a ring with a pearl so large it looks like a stolen moon. You don't like him. He unfurls the prints and stares at them for too long, then nods once. I can feel her eyes, he whispers, pointing at the ghost. Did Hokusai see her in a dream? Oei doesn't answer. She never does. He leaves behind a small pouch of silver coins and a folded note bearing the crest of a daimyo, an invitation to attend a moon viewing festival in 2 weeks, a possible commission, or a trap. You've lived in Edo long enough to know both often wear the same robe. After he leaves, she locks the door, draws the shutters, and sits down hard on the floor, like she's suddenly carrying the weight of everything that wasn't said. They never ask who painted it, she murmurs. You say nothing. They feel it. They say, I can feel the sorrow, the hunger, the ghost. But they never ask whose fingers held the brush. You offer her a cup of water. She takes it, but doesn't drink. Then she tells you about the other paintings. The ones no one has ever seen. Hidden under tatami mats, folded into the sleeves of old kimonos, traded for fish and ink and the occasional clean bar of soap. She painted for herself once. A young woman with wild hair, standing in a field of poppies that looked suspiciously like fire. A boy feeding a dragon rice balls. A mother drowning in the smile of her child. They're not elegant, she says. Too messy. Too me. You ask her where those paintings are now. She points to a square in the wall. Bare. Simple. No decoration. Just a memory nailed into silence. Burned. Accident. Years ago. My fault. Or maybe the cat's. She says it with a dry laugh, but her hand tightens around the cup until her knuckles turn pale. You want to say something. Comforting. Maybe. But you know better. Instead, you say what colour was the fire. She looks at you, blinks once. Same colour as shame, she says, only louder. Outside, the wind picks up. The paper screens shiver. A brush falls from its hook. Inside, you sit in silence next to a woman who was never meant to be quiet. And for one small second, it feels like history is holding its breath. It rains the next morning. A slow, sideways kind of rain that slides between roof tiles and taps at wooden shutters like a bored visitor who won't leave. Oei opens the window anyway, lets the cool damp air roll in across the floor. The ink won't dry properly today. The brushes will soak too long, but she doesn't care. You sit across from her, cradling a chipped teacup with a crack that's grown just slightly longer since yesterday. Today's project is a commission for a minor noble his dead wife's memorial portrait. He sent a lock of her hair tied in a ribbon, a crude ink sketch, and a bundle of plum blossoms to inspire softness. Oei snorts when she opens the box. Softness, she says, holding the sketch up to the light. He loved her like a mirror he forgot to clean. You want to laugh, but you don't. Instead, you watch her begin. The first line is always bold, confident. The second a hesitation. The third, a correction of the second, but only barely. By the fifth, it's as though the paper has started whispering back. She paints not the woman as the sketch suggests, but something else. A presence, a memory. You're not sure when it happens, but halfway through, the face changes, the jaw softens, the eyes tilt. A trace of sorrow creeps into the corners of the lips, as though the woman knew she was fading even as she was drawn. Oei doesn't speak for 3 hours. When she finally puts down the brush, she exhales like she's been underwater. The portrait glows in the grey afternoon light. Not beautiful, not grand, but real. She's gone, Oei says simply, but not forgotten. Not by me, at least. Then she signs it Hokusai in tight, careful characters. You flinch. She doesn't. His name opens doors. She shrugs. Mine opens nothing but arguments. The rain grows heavier. Hokusai grumbles from his mat about frogs in the kitchen. He thinks he's hallucinating again. You check. There is, in fact, a frog. It blinks at you from the corner near the miso barrel and doesn't move when you wave at it. You leave it there. It feels appropriate. Oei decides to visit the carvers. You go with her, stepping through puddles, dodging umbrellas, the two of you cloaked in rain-soaked cotton and half-spoken thoughts. The print shop is loud, sawdust and smoke in the air, apprentices yelling, a man sharpening chisels with the intensity of someone who once stabbed his own foot just to meet a deadline. They greet Oei as Hokusai's assistant. She corrects no one. She checks proofs, adjusts margins, discards one entirely because the lines are off by a hair's width. One of the carvers mutters something about her being too sensitive. She pretends not to hear. But when no one's looking, she picks up a slip of scrap paper and sketches a demon peeking out of a plum blossom. The carver who called her sensitive finds it an hour later, glued to the inside of his lunchbox. He doesn't mention it again. On the walk home, she says nothing for a long time. Then, without turning, she asks, "Do you think people can feel who painted something, even if they don't know the name?" You say yes, absolutely. She nods once. "They say the same about ghosts," she murmurs. "You don't have to see them. You just know when they're in the room." The rain stops just as you reach the house. The frog is gone. A half-finished print lies on the table, an image of a woman watching the moon from a rooftop. One hand raised like she's about to wave but hasn't decided to yet. You realise then that you've seen that posture before. In the mirror, in dreams, in the space between names. The next morning you're woken not by birds or rain or Hokusai's complaints but by the sound of Oei laughing. It's rare, like hearing a statue sigh. You sit up, startled, and see her crouched near the hearth, holding a scroll that's too wide to unroll on the table and too fragile to touch with dry fingers. The cat, yes. There is a cat now. Sleek and indifferent sits on top of it. "He kept this," she says, half to herself, of all things. She lifts the corner of the scroll gently. Beneath it a sketch she made years ago. You can tell by the line work. The hand isn't quite confident yet, but it's already unmistakably hers. It's a portrait of Hokusai, not as the towering genius people see on broadsides, but as a wrinkled man sitting in the bath, holding a daikon like it's a pipe, looking offended at the water for being wet. She smiles, then frowns. "Why did he keep this?" she mutters, setting it down with reverence disguised as carelessness. You both know why, but you don't say it. That afternoon, a letter arrives. It's from the daimyo's court. The moon viewing commission is confirmed. 3 panels, ink and colour, subject the spirit of autumn, delivery in 6 days, signed with a flourish that smells like lacquer and politics. Hokusai squints at it, tries to pretend he can still hold a brush without trembling, then waves it away. "You do it," he grumbles, "but make sure it smells like me." Oei doesn't react. She just ties up her hair and reaches for her pigments. 3 panels. She sketches ideas in silence. A fox in a wheat field. A shrine eaten by red leaves. A woman sleeping with a crow perched on her shoulder. Too soft, she says of the fox. Too obvious, she says of the shrine. The woman stays. By dusk, she has her plan. You help stretch the paper across the frames. She begins painting as the first stars appear. No grid, no draft, just pure instinct. Her brush moves like it remembers something her mind forgot. Over the next 3 days, she barely sleeps. Each morning you bring her rice and tea and watch her fight the silence into colour. Her ink runs dry, her shoulders ache, but she doesn't stop. She adds a second figure, an old man with empty eyes, sitting beneath the sleeping woman, almost hidden in the brushstrokes. A watcher, or a warning. On the 4th night, she sets down the final brush, cracks her fingers, and says, "It's not beautiful, but it's real. She signs it Katsushika Taito. You blink, it's not her name. It's his name, she explains. One of his old ones. No one remembers it now. If they ask, they'll think it's him before he became Hokusai. You want to ask why she doesn't use her own name. But you know the answer. If she did, the panel might never be unrolled, might never even be seen. It would sit in a drawer until someone sold it for the paper, or worse, attributed it to someone else anyway. On the 5th day, the panel is delivered. The court steward barely glances at her. The next week, you hear rumours from the tea house, whispers of a lost Hokusai painting appearing at court, a noble weeping under a painting of autumn, a poet reciting verses to the crow on the woman's shoulder. No one mentions "e," but someone felt her. You're sure of it. That night, she lights a candle, pulls out a scrap of paper, draws a little frog playing a flute under a mushroom, laughs once, folds it into a paper crane, places it on Hokusai's pillow. He wakes, sees it, grumbles about fox demons, falls back asleep. The next morning you find it still there. Sometimes uncredited art still manages to survive. Sometimes so do the artists. You wake to a commotion. Voices outside loud, anxious, muffled by wooden walls and morning steam. Oei slides open the door just a crack and peeks out. Then she sighs, deep, from the bones. "It's the courtesans again," she mutters, rubbing sleep from her eyes with ink-stained knuckles. Another fight. Someone's lover was someone else's patron, and someone else painted someone in a print she didn't approve of. You don't ask for details. You've been in Edo long enough to know that scandals in the Yoshiwara pleasure quarter are like thunderstorms in summer loud, dramatic, and mostly ignored by morning. But today is different. Oei stands and begins to gather her brushes, her better ones, the ones she oils and wraps in silk. "They want a portrait," she says. You blink. Of who? She ties back her hair. Of her. She doesn't say the name, but you already know who she means. Takasago no Suzu, the most sought-after courtesan in Edo. A woman with a voice like snowmelt and a temper like pepper root. Rumour says she can make poets cry with a smile or ruin a merchant with a single fan flick. She's retiring, Oei explains, wants to be remembered. You walk with her through the narrow lanes, past food stalls and stray dogs, toward the high latticed gates of the Yoshiwara. She doesn't pause as the gatekeepers nod her through. No one questions her presence. They've all heard of the woman who paints ghost women with visible thoughts, and cats that blink with judgment. The room inside is soaked in scent peony, sandalwood, and the trace of sake on silk. Suzu waits on a dais, surrounded by cushions and courtiers. She looks younger than her reputation, or older, hard to say. Her eyes meet Ei's, and something passes between them. Not friendship, not rivalry. Recognition. They both know what it means to be seen and unseen at the same time. Suzu gestures wordlessly. The room empties. Oei sits, unrolls her paper, dips the brush. The portrait takes 2 hours. You watch the lines unfold a cheekbone like the moon behind clouds, the gaze like lacquered steel. Suzu holds still, but her spirit sways just enough to make the brush dance. When it's done, Suzu walks forward, looks down at her own face, says nothing. Then, quietly, she lifts her sleeve and presses her palm onto the ink. A perfect handprint blooms across her shoulder in the image. "It's mine, now," she says. "No one can pretend otherwise." Oei doesn't argue. You leave with the scroll hidden under a wrap. Suzu will display it in her retirement house on the hill, where only the wind and a few carefully chosen guests will ever see it. That evening, back home, Oei pulls out an old sketch. It's of a girl barely 20 with wide eyes and a crooked hairpin, sitting on the steps of a temple, barefoot and half smiling. The lines are tentative, but the emotion is clear. "Was that your first self-portrait?" you ask. She looks at it, touches the edge of the page. "No," she says, "it was my first lie." She folds it, places it in a wooden box, and says no more. That night Hokusai is unusually quiet. He sits by the window, sketching something invisible on the air with his finger. You catch only fragments: a dragon's claw, a wave's curl, a woman's eye. She's better than me, you know, he mutters, not looking at you. You stay silent. Always was, always will be. Then he sighs, like an emperor letting go of a crown made of paper and ego. You nod, because yes, you already knew. The next morning smells like fermented rice and old ink. Hokusai is asleep with a brush still tucked behind his ear and one foot poking out from under the futon like a particularly defiant carrot. You step over him on the way to the kitchen, only to find Oei perched cross-legged at the low table, balancing a half-peeled persimmon and staring at it as if it might tell her something profound. She doesn't look up. Do you ever wonder if ghosts get bored, she asks, slicing the persimmon with a blade far too sharp for breakfast. You blink, bleary-eyed. I mean, she continues, once they're done haunting lovers and pacing old battlefields, what do they do? Sit around sighing in the rafters. You shrug, offer a non-committal grunt. I think, she says, they come to visit print shops. She tosses the slice to the cat, who sniffs it with disdain and goes back to licking its tail. It's not long before the morning brings its first real interruption. A paper seller at the door, shouting something about a delivery, a new shipment of the mulberry pulp, and a surprise parcel wrapped in lacquered cloth. Oei takes the parcel, frowns, and opens it slowly. Inside a single folded letter and a block print she did 2 years ago, a portrait of a kabuki actor mid-dance, shadows curling like smoke around his outstretched fan. She didn't sign it, but someone did. The signature reads Shinsai, one of Hokusai's oldest pseudonyms. Her hands tighten. Stolen, she murmurs, lifted from the workshop, sold in Kyoto. You lean in. The forgery is almost perfect. Almost. He softened the eyes, she says. They were supposed to be hollow. That was the whole point. The letter is from a collector, praising Hokusai's emotional maturity and requesting a companion piece. I should burn it, she mutters. But she doesn't. She wraps the print, places it back in the parcel, and tucks it under the floorboards. Not to forget, just to remind herself what forgetting looks like. Later, she visits the river. You follow, boots sliding in the mud, breath visible in the morning air. The banks are lined with fishermen and willow trees and women washing cloth in silence. The kind of silence that feels deliberate, sacred, almost. She kneels by the water, dips a brush, and lets the current carry the ink into the shallows. She paints on scraps of thin rice paper quick studies, a fish leaping into nothing, a moon that doesn't want to be full, a child holding a lantern too big for her hands. She lets each one float downstream. When you ask her why, she shrugs. I used to think every painting needed to last, but some just need to exist, briefly. She pauses, eyes the sky. Like us. The words hang heavy. That night she dreams out loud. You hear her muttering in her sleep, don't sign it. Don't need to sign it. When she wakes, she says nothing. Just gets up, ties her hair, and begins painting again, something large this time. Something you're not allowed to see yet. She works past sundown, past Hokusai's snores and the cat's deep sighs, with only the sound of her brush to keep her company. Scratch, swirl, pause. She doesn't look up. But you hear her whisper, just once, under her breath, I'm still here. And the paper listens. The house smells of damp wood and faint smoke. The seasons are shifting again. You feel it in the corners, in the way the light creeps differently through the shoji screens, in how the ink takes longer to dry. Autumn is tiptoeing in with cold fingers and a sharp tongue. Oei hasn't spoken in hours. She's knee-deep in a new project, one she won't let you see from the front. All you catch are glimpses when she stands to stretch a pair of eyes, too wide to be human. A bird's wing, curling like a question, a forest, perhaps, or a dream. You don't ask, you know better now. Instead, you poke around the studio, stepping carefully over crumpled practice sheets and jars of pigment in hues you swear weren't in the shop last week, ink the colour of bruised lavender. ochre so rich it smells like earth after rain. Under the table you find a stack of hidden scrolls tied with fraying twine. No names, no stamps, no signatures. You untie one. Inside a scene of two women seated back to back. One is painting, the other is watching a mirror. You look closer, there is no reflection, just an empty pane of glass, and behind the painter, a fox peeking over her shoulder. You don't need to ask whose work it is. You hear E's voice behind you and calm, but cold. Put it back. You do. She sits across from you and rubs her fingers, still stained from hours of brushwork. That one was never finished, she says. Didn't know how to end it. She's quiet for a beat. Still don't. You want to say something clever about how some paintings don't need endings, but you don't. You're learning how to leave the silences intact. Instead, you ask if she remembers the ghost commission from the spring, the one with the widow and the ribcage comb. She nods slowly. She wrote me a letter. She rummages through a drawer and pulls out a thin slip of paper. It's been folded and unfolded so many times it's more crease than ink. It reads, "Thank you for painting her the way she still feels in my dreams." No signature, just that. She knew, Oei whispers. She didn't need to ask. Later, as dusk begins to crawl through the paper windows, Hokusai stumbles into the room holding a painting in both hands like it might fall apart if he moves too fast. It's his dragon, the unfinished one, the one he'd been sketching in the air with invisible ink for months. But something's different. It's complete. You look at Oei. She's avoiding your gaze. The faintest smile tugs at the corner of her mouth. Sometimes, she says, you have to finish something for someone else, so they can believe they did it. Hokusai is beaming, shuffling back to his room as if he's just outwitted death. You say nothing. That night the moon is a perfect disk, white and watching. You and Oei sit outside under the overhang, sharing a handful of roasted chestnuts and not talking. A moth dances around the lantern. She watches it for a long time. Then do you think, if I had signed every piece, they would have remembered me? You say yes. Then after a moment, but not the right way, she nods. That's what I thought too. She leans back, eyes half closed, the smell of ink still clinging to her sleeves like perfume. The cat curls against her side, purring in a frequency only tired artists can hear. The night settles. You think of all the scrolls under all the floorboards in all the cities in all the centuries, and you wonder how many silent geniuses just kept painting. You wake before sunrise to the sound of quiet rustling, the sort of deliberate, careful movement that only ever means someone's either hiding something or packing for a journey. It's Oei. She's folding a bundle of papers into a worn travel case, along with brushes, a bamboo inkstone, and a small pouch of coins tied with faded green ribbon. Her hair is still down, and she's wearing her winter robe, though the chill hasn't fully arrived yet. Going somewhere, you ask, still half asleep. She doesn't look up, north. You sit up, alone. She nods. A temple near Nikko. They want murals, sea gods, sky monsters, the usual. You rub your eyes. They asked for you. She shrugs. They asked for Hokusai. I said he's ill. I didn't lie. Hokusai, from the other room, lets out a groan as if on cue, followed by a wet-sounding snore. You both glance toward the sliding door. Neither of you moves. You'll be gone long, you ask. Oei presses her hand to the top of the case, steadying the weight. A week, maybe 2, depends how many gods they want. You offer to come with her. She considers it, really considers it, but shakes her head. Too many monks, too much damp. You'd hate it. She's probably right. Instead, you help her pack a small flask of tea and 3 charcoal sticks. She wraps them in silk with the kind of care most people reserve for relics or bones. Before she leaves, she checks on the dragon painting again, the one she finished for Hokusai in secret. She smooths the edges, adjusts a wrinkle in the rice paper. Think he knows. You shake your head. I think he chooses not to. She smiles faintly. Then maybe he's not the only artist here who's good at pretending. You walk her to the road just as the horizon blushes with light. The mist curls around the rooftops like steam from a too-hot kettle. She doesn't say goodbye, just raises a hand. Then she's gone sandals tapping on the stones, the bundle strapped across her back like a soldier marching toward a war only she believes in. Back at the house, it's quiet, unsettlingly so. You spend the morning flipping through her sketches, cats in mid-yawn, demons that look suspiciously like debt collectors, a woman crying into a bowl of rice, a child building a mountain out of fans. Each one unsigned. That evening, a messenger arrives. He carries a scroll. You recognise the wax seal, it's from the temple. But it's too early for a commission update. You open it. It's not from the monks. It's from her, in Oei's fine, tight handwriting. The sky here is too clean. The gods too polite. I've added a few imperfections to the sea monsters so they'll feel more at home. I miss the frog. Don't forget to feed the cat. And at the bottom, as an afterthought. Also, if anyone asks, the wind dragon wasn't my idea. It was yours. Blame you. You laugh. The cat, curled under the table, yawns in approval. You set the scroll aside. Then a curiosity takes you. You open the floorboard. The scrolls are still there, the hidden ones, the unsigned ones, the ones that carry more truth than the court commissions ever could. You take one out, unroll it slowly. A woman sleeping in a field, the stars tucked under her arm like a blanket. In her dream, a fox is painting her portrait. You realise then that Oei doesn't need to sign her name anymore. She's already everywhere. In shadows, in dragons, in empty mirrors, in the space between someone else's brush and the truth it fails to catch. And you silent companion, reluctant witness, are beginning to understand just how much of history is written in invisible ink. 3 days pass, no word. You spend them sweeping ash from the corners of the studio and sorting her papers by mood, sorrowful, angry, accidentally hopeful. Hokusai doesn't notice. He's busy arguing with the gods of thunder in his sleep and requesting tea from invisible attendants. By the 4th day, the letter arrives. But it's not from Oei. It's from the temple. Their official seal, their official apology. You read it 3 times before setting it down. There was an accident, a scaffolding collapse. She's alive but injured, a broken wrist. They think. Her dominant hand. You go still. The letter says she's resting, that she refused a physician and insisted on painting with her other hand, that she's in good spirits. You know better than to believe any of that. You book passage north on the next cart. The journey is slow, damp roads, drunk drivers, one stubborn ox, but eventually the trees begin to shift around you, tall and stoic and damp with prayer. The temple looms on a hill, all red beams and carved dragons, with mist wrapped around it like a shawl. She's there, sitting on the veranda with her right arm in a sling, and her left hand attempting a sketch of a monk who keeps blinking at the wrong moment. She sees you and raises a good eyebrow. I told you not to come. You sit beside her. Say nothing. She lets the silence stretch like a scroll unrolling in reverse. Eventually she hands you a page. It's a drawing rough, clearly done with her non-dominant hand, a cat with crossed eyes, a monk tangled in a tree, the moon looking mildly disappointed. I'm reinventing my style, she says deadpan. You laugh. She doesn't. I'm not sure it'll come back, she whispers, lifting her wrapped wrist like something sacred and broken. The hand, the line, the rhythm. You shake your head. You haven't lost it. You just misplaced it for a bit. She doesn't argue. She stares out at the fog, her eyes reflecting shapes you can't see yet. That night, you sit by her futon while she sleeps. The monks gave her the room with the best view of the garden, but she never asked for it. Her fingers twitch in her dreams, like they're still drawing behind her eyelids. And in the morning, you find a fresh sketch on the floor near the table, done with her left hand, still wet. It's of her own right hand, braced, tired, but still curled like it's holding a brush. You look closer. Tucked between two fingers is a tiny fox, smiling. She never mentions it. Back in Edo a week later, you return to the house with news that she's healing. Hokusai waves a hand like she's just gone to the market and forgot to buy plums. But you find something strange waiting in the studio. A scroll. Signed, Oei! No pseudonym, no borrowed name, no shadow. Just her, a woman standing in the middle of a storm, holding a paintbrush like a blade. The wind howls around her, but she doesn't move. You stare at it for a long time. Then you roll it up, carefully, reverently. You don't hang it. Some things are too alive to frame. Some things aren't meant to be captured, only carried. The first frost arrives quietly. You don't notice it until the water in the ink bowl forms a thin skin of ice, cracking softly when you drop a brush in without thinking. The cat refuses to leave the stove. Hokusai demands extra blankets but refuses all of them because they smell like cabbage ghosts. Oei returns 2 days later. She carries herself like she's still at the temple back straight, eyes forward, words folded neatly between breaths. Her wrist is stiff, but the sling is gone. She doesn't mention pain, which means it still hurts. She doesn't paint for a while. Instead, she watches. She watches the rain drip down the corners of roof tiles, and the cat stalk beetles under the floorboards, and you struggle to remember how to grind ink without getting it all over your sleeves. Not like that, she says one morning. You pause. Too much water, she explains. You're not making soup. You smile, so does she, barely. Later that week, she visits an old friend, a carver named Manoa, who used to joke that her ghost blinked too much. He's dying now. Consumption, they say. Paper lungs. She returns pale and quiet, but with a single plank of cherry wood tucked under her arm. He saved this, she says, laying it on the table. Said he meant to carve something of mine but never got around to it. She stares at it like it's already half alive. The next day, she begins. She sketches the design directly on the wood, a fox curled inside a lantern, a woman's eye in the glass, bamboo leaves swaying outside the frame. It's small, no bigger than a hand, but every line is exact, precise, personal. You watch her cut the lines herself. Tradition says she shouldn't carving is for specialists, but she doesn't care. If I can draw the ghost, she says, I can carve it too. The gouge slips once. She doesn't curse, just licks the cut on her finger and keeps going. You sit with her late into the night. By candlelight, the woodblock looks like it's breathing. The shadows change shape when you blink. When she finally presses the first print, you hold your breath. It's imperfect. The lines are slightly uneven. The ink pools where it shouldn't. But the feeling, it's there. Soft and sharp, secret and unashamed. It's mine, she whispers, every inch. She signs it with a red seal you've never seen before. Not her name, not Hokusai's, just a single character. Oei. Not hidden, not borrowed. Just her. She doesn't say what she'll do with it. But you notice the next morning it's gone from the table. You find it later folded carefully, tucked into a paper offering at the local shrine. Anonymous, a gift to the wind. You gave it away, you ask. She nods. I made it to let it go. That night, as you prepare tea and light the lantern, you think you hear her humming. A tune you don't recognize. Maybe a lullaby. Maybe just the sound of someone who's finally made something they don't need anyone else to see. Because it's real. Because it's hers. Winter settles over Edo like a heavy robe, quiet, reluctant, and impossible to shake. The river slows to a crawl beneath thin ice. Roofs creak with frost. Even the market hawkers shout more softly, as though their voices could crack in the cold. Inside the studio, breath fogs the windows. The cat refuses to leave the brazier. Hokusai is wearing 4 robes and has declared war on a particularly loud cricket living in the ceiling. He loses. Or he barely notices. She's painting again, but only at night. By day, she sleeps or sits by the stove, turning dried citrus peels into ink experiments and folding paper cranes from used scroll margins. But once the sun slips below the hills, she comes alive. Her newest project is quiet, monochrome. No dramatic ghosts or demons this time, just small scenes, a woman tying a child's hair, a crow watching snowfall, a man repairing his own sandals with thread too short to knot. You watch her in those hours, the brush gliding silently, her face unreadable. "What are you working on?" you ask one night. She glances up, a dream that forgot it was a memory. You wait, knowing she'll explain in her own time. Finally she does. "When I was small, before all the commissions and the courtesans and the dragons, I used to draw the things no one else noticed. A dog under a bridge, a leaf that looked like a fish, my mother's hands sewing in silence." She pauses. "I stopped doing that when people started looking." There's a long breath between you. Maybe it's time to start again. A few days later, a monk arrives. He carries a letter, stamped with a crest from a mountain temple near Kyoto. They're requesting a scroll for their meditation hall, something quiet. The letter reads, "Something that understands stillness." Oei raises an eyebrow. "They want stillness." You nod. She shrugs. "I'll give them the most exhausted silence I've got." That evening she paints a woman sitting on a rock with her eyes closed, hair loose in the wind, hands in her lap. Behind her mountains dissolving into fog, in front of her nothing. No symbols, no gods, just space. She doesn't sign it, just rolls it gently and ties it with plum-coloured string. When the monk returns to collect it, he opens it, stares for a long time and says nothing. Then he bows, so low his forehead touches the floor. After he leaves, Oei lights a small stick of incense and sits beside the cat, watching the smoke curl. "They'll say it's his work," she says. You know who she means. They always do. You don't argue, but something shifts in her tone. She's not angry, not bitter, just clear. "Let them," she adds. You glance at the painting still drying on the wall, a woman washing her hands in winter water, the ice rippling like silk. It's so delicate it hurts. You look back at Oei. "You're not done, are you?" She smirks. Do ghosts retire? That night the frost thickens. But inside the studio, the ink stays warm. And Oei paints until the candle gives out, not with urgency or fear, but with the soft defiance of someone who knows that if the world won't speak her name, her brush will do it for her. Over and over again, until someone listens. A week later, Edo wakes to a rare snowfall. Not the wet, sloppy kind that turns to slush by noon, but real snow silent, dignified, falling straight down like old secrets returning home. The rooftops blur into soft white humps, and the river hushes itself under a fresh skin of frost. Oei opens the door and just stands there, arms folded in her sleeves, watching it fall. You watch her watching, and for a second, it feels like you're both part of the same quiet painting. She doesn't say it aloud, but you can tell this is the kind of morning she'd like to sketch. But she doesn't. Not yet. Instead, she begins to clean. Not a quick sweep or polite dusting, but a full, deliberate emptying. She stacks scrolls, burns old notes, empties jars of pigment that have grown too crusted to save. Hokusai stirs and grumbles. "You're killing the memories." She responds without looking up, just cleaning the ghosts. By midday, the studio feels new, empty, sacred. She sets up fresh paper, bigger than usual, almost the size of a full wall. You help tack it up. It hangs there like a breath waiting to be exhaled. Then she begins. No sketch, no plan, just brush to page. At first, the strokes are abstract. Wind, movement, bare tree limbs. But then forms begin to emerge. You recognize her immediately. A woman standing in the snow, back to the viewer, hair loose and dark against white. She's barefoot. In one hand, she holds a lantern, in the other, nothing. She adds more crows watching from a distance, footprints that vanish halfway across the frame, and a fox, always a fox. You don't ask what it means. You know she wouldn't tell you anyway. By nightfall, the piece is nearly done. Only the lantern is left unfinished. I don't know if it should be lit or dark, she murmurs. You think about it. Maybe both, you say. She pauses, then smiles. Good answer. She finishes it with a flick of gold ink that catches the candlelight just so one brushstroke, and suddenly the lantern flickers alive, barely glowing, the way hope sometimes does in stories we're too tired to finish. She steps back, says nothing. Then, in a move that startles even you, she signs it. Oei. No disguise, no joke, no anonymity. She hangs the painting on the outer wall of the house, facing the street, not tucked away, not for sale, just there. By morning, people will walk by. Some will stop, some won't. Some will ask, is that a new Hokusai? Some will look closer and realise it isn't. Some won't care, and still, the painting will remain. A woman in the snow, a flickering light, a name no longer hidden. Later, you find her in the back room, sipping cold tea, the cat snoring in her lap. Won't it get damaged out there, you ask? She shrugs. Everything gets damaged eventually. You both sit in the stillness, warm despite the frost, listening to the snow soften the edges of the world. And for once, Oei looks content, not triumphant, not vengeful, just full. Like the silence itself is finally saying her name back. The painting remains on the outer wall for 6 days. By the end of the first, footprints gather around it like petals around a shrine. By the third, a scroll seller leaves incense at its base. By the 6th, someone hangs a slip of paper with a poem attached. Snow does not ask who first held the brush only, whether it remembers. Oei doesn't react to any of it. She spends those 6 days working on something even stranger, an illustrated folding screen. Not for commission, not for display, but for a child she's never met. It starts when a neighbour's boy shows up during the snowfall, wide-eyed, nose running, dragging a broken kite shaped like a carp. He stares at the studio wall, then at Oei, then at the inkstone. You draw ghosts, he asks, without fear. She raises an eyebrow, only on Tuesdays. He comes back the next day anyway. And the next, Oei doesn't chase him off. Instead, she sketches animals that look suspiciously like the neighbourhood's stray dogs. She folds frogs from rice wrappers and hides them around the house. One morning, you wake to find she's painted a tiny door on the side of the brazier for a fire spirit, she says, who sometimes steals warmth when it's feeling ignored. The folding screen becomes a forest. Not a real one, but the kind that only exists in a child's half-dreams trees with too many eyes, mushrooms shaped like umbrellas, a fox teaching calligraphy to a turtle. The child gasps when he sees it, traces the lines with a reverence only children and monks seem to manage. I want to live in this one, he whispers. She pats his head. Then take it with you when you grow up. He doesn't understand what she means. But you do. The next day, she gives it to him, just like that. No charge, no name, just a nod and a small smile and a final brushstroke hidden in the corner so faint it might be the wind. You ask her, why that one, why not keep it? She shrugs. Because some art isn't for proving anything, it's just for planting. Later that evening you return to the painting on the wall. It's weathering now, the corners curling slightly. Snow has left trails of melted ink down the woman's robes. The gold in the lantern has dimmed to a soft bronze. But it still holds you. Still asks something you can't quite answer. Oei joins you. Do you regret putting it out here, you ask? She squints at the lantern. No, she says. If it fades, it fades. But while it lived, it whispered. You both stand there as dusk folds itself over the rooftops. Hokusai creaks open the window behind you and mutters something about fools wasting good brushes on foxes, then slams it shut. Oei laughs, really laughs, loud and full, and for a moment you wonder if the entire neighbourhood can hear her. If they can, no one complains. That night she paints a new piece, small, simple. A lantern floating down a river. Inside it not fire, but a tiny ghost curled in sleep. She folds it and places it on the shelf beside the tea jars. You glance at it before bed. "Who's that one for?" you ask. She sips her tea. "Me," she says, and smiles. The lantern painting stays on the shelf for days, untouched, unmentioned, like a secret she gave herself permission to keep. Oei moves through the house slowly now, not because she's weak, but because she's watching. Everything. The ink as it thickens in winter air, the cat's tail twitching just before it pounces on nothing, the way the sunlight climbs the wall a little differently each day. You've seen artists work fast. She's the opposite. She waits. Then, when something clicks, she paints in a rush, a single breath held for hours until the moment passes and she sets the brush down again, like someone slipping a message into a bottle she doesn't plan to send. One morning she brings out an old box. It smells of cedar and neglect. She opens it, revealing a stack of prints wrapped in cloth, some yellowed with time, some smudged, others pristine, all unsigned. "These were the ones I wanted to be mine," she says, "but I was afraid." You leaf through them. A weeping woman dissolving into waves, a fox sitting at a mirror that reflects a skull, a child floating upside down over a field of bamboo. They're stunning. You say so. She doesn't respond. Instead, she pulls out one last piece from the bottom of the box. It's different. Delicate lines, empty space, a single plum blossom, halfway opened, caught in the moment between becoming and breaking. "I made this the day I buried my mother," she says softly. It's not what you expect. No grief, no chaos, just stillness. "I thought I'd forget her," she adds, "so I painted how it felt to try." You ask if she wants to sign it now. She shakes her head. "That one was always mine. I don't need anyone else to know." You wrap it carefully, place it back, and slide the box beneath the bed. Some pieces are only ever meant to be remembered by one pair of hands. Later that evening she paints with you. Not beside you with you, on the same page. A strange little scene, a ghost serving tea to a crow, a woman peeking from behind a curtain of wind, a house with too many windows and one door that leads to the sky. Is this a story, you ask? It's a conversation, she says, between who I was and who I thought I'd be. You look at the finished piece. There's no moral, no centre, just motion, possibility. She signs it, then hands it to you. For later, she says, in case I forget how to begin, you hold it like a relic. That night, as the fire crackles low and Hokusai snores like a broken bellows, she writes something in her sketchbook. You peek just once. A list, but not of tasks or commissions. It reads, "Things I will paint someday. A woman sleeping inside a fox, a god folding laundry, a kite that never lands. The sound of regret, in indigo, a laugh that came too late. No deadline, no pressure, just intention." When she closes the book, she does it with both hands, as if sealing something sacred. And in the stillness that follows, you realize she's no longer trying to be seen. She's simply trying to be. The new year comes without fanfare. No fireworks, no parades, just the soft patter of snow on tile and a neighbour's broom pushing salt across stone. Edo is quiet, bundled, yawning its way into January. Oei greets it by sweeping the floor. Not metaphorically, literally. She ties back her sleeves, grabs the old straw broom, and begins brushing out weeks of dust, ash, and crumpled paper ghosts that never became real paintings. When she finishes, she hangs a new sheet of paper by the door. At first glance, it's blank. But in the corner, so faint you nearly miss it, is a single character. More emptiness. Starting from nothing this year, she says, hands on hips. Hokusai mutters that starting from nothing is just called poverty, and that he invented it. But he doesn't argue when Oei takes down 3 of his prints from the wall and replaces them with hers. Not signed, but unmistakable. That afternoon, she visits the paper seller's stall near the river. The old man greets her with a nod, his granddaughter perched beside him like a cherry blossom that grew legs. The girl's about 10 ink on her sleeves, a sketchbook in her lap. She's been copying your ghosts, the grandfather says. Told her not to, but she won't stop. The girl looks up. They're alive. I want to know where they go when I sleep. Oei crouches beside her. You know they only appear when the brush listens. Right. The girl nods, wide-eyed. Oei flips through the sketchbook. Most of it's chaos-smudged cats, floating faces, one page that seems to be a ghost made entirely of noodles. But there's one image unfinished that makes her pause. A woman with no mouth, standing at a crossroads beneath 3 moons. She's yours, Oei whispers. Don't ask me what she means. The girl beams. Oei tears a small strip from her own sketchbook, draws something fast, hands it over. A frog, sitting on a ghost's shoulder, reading a book upside down. No one will understand this, she tells her, which is why it matters. They exchange no other words. On the way back, you ask, was that how you started? She chuckles. I started by drawing my father's ghosts. Took years before I realised I had my own. You think about that. About all the girls with ink-stained sleeves who will never get mentioned in history scrolls unless they become someone else first. Back home, Oei unrolls a new piece. This one's different. It's her. Truly her. Not in disguise, not softened. She's seated on the floor, brush in hand, looking away from the viewer. Her hair is messy, her expression unreadable. A fox is curled beside her, eyes open. On the wall behind her, instead of scrolls, there's only open space. She signs it, then folds it, then burns it in the brazier. You shout instinctively. She shrugs. I didn't need anyone else to see it. I needed to know it. You sit in silence, the scent of scorched mulberry pulp curling through the room like a spirit exhaling. And you understand this isn't surrender. It's sovereignty. That night, she sketches by candlelight again. Something slow, gentle. The cat snores. Hokusai talks in his sleep about koi that owe him money. You watch her draw without needing to ask what it is. It's not a ghost. It's not a fox. It's not even a woman. It's a hand. A single hand. Holding nothing. And somehow, everything. The next morning, Oei surprises you. Not with a painting and not with a lecture on ink viscosity, but with breakfast. 2 rice balls, still warm, a slice of pickled radish shaped like a crescent moon, and tea poured, not steeped, as if she actually waited for it to brew instead of just forgetting about it. You blink at the offering. She grins, lopsided. I figured if we're going to starve for art, we should at least start full. You eat together on the veranda. The snow has melted in patches, revealing damp earth and last autumn's forgotten leaves. The cat watches you both from the threshold, judging your chewing rhythm. Do you remember, she begins, between sips, when we used to think we'd be famous? You don't answer immediately. She doesn't wait. Not just known, she says. Famous. As if one day, someone would say our names with reverence. As if we'd matter so much, even after we're dead. You glance at her. And now, she shrugs. Now I think, I'd rather haunt people quietly, not with fear, just with the echo of a brushstroke they can't forget. You nod. That afternoon, she digs out one of her oldest paintings. It's crude done with cheap ink on fraying paper, a woman kneeling under a willow, hands empty, face turned away. She doesn't try to improve it. She just looks at it for a long time, then folds it gently, ties it with twine, and slips it into an envelope addressed to no one. What are you doing with that, you ask? I'm sending it to the wind. You don't question it. Later, she invites you to help her with a new piece. It's collaborative, not her leading, not you assisting, but both of you dipping brushes, pausing, trading places. The painting unfolds like a conversation you didn't know you needed. It's not perfect. You smudge a line. She forgets a shadow. The cat steps across the lower corner and leaves a paw print in indigo. You both laugh. Leave it, she says. That's the best part. The next day, a merchant arrives from Osaka. He's heard rumours of unsigned works, ghostly prints, paintings that breathe. He offers coin, a lot of it. She declines. He offers more. He names her father. She smiles politely, then offers him a print of a potato with legs, dancing. He takes it. He pays for it. He looks confused. After he leaves, she says, if they don't understand the joke, they don't deserve the truth. The next few weeks pass quietly. She paints less. Not from fatigue, but from choice. She begins walking more down to the river, through the market, up into the hills where the wind hums like an old song, and the trees bow politely when no one's watching. One day, she doesn't bring a sketchbook. You raise an eyebrow. I'm trying something radical, she says. I'm remembering things without capturing them. You mock gasp, blasphemy. She laughs. That night you find her writing again. Not sketching, writing. A short poem, unrhymed, uneven. But true. My name was not a door. It was a shadow I painted on the wall so you'd know where to stand. She doesn't sign it, but she slips it into her sleeve. Just in case. The final snow falls with no ceremony. Just a soft dusting overnight, enough to sugar the rooftops and vanish by noon. The city exhales, not in celebration, but in resignation. Another winter survived, another season folded into memory. Oei spends the morning writing letters. Not to anyone you know, just names. Some you recognise from old scroll margins, some you don't. She writes each with care, seals them with her thumbprint and tosses them one by one into the fire. You watch silently until she says, sometimes the only way to send a message is to burn it. Later that day, you walk with her through the market. She's not buying supplies, not today. She's visiting, first, the calligrapher who once accused her of stealing his line style. He's nearly blind now and offers her tea with trembling hands. She helps him straighten a crooked frame, then leaves a tiny drawing tucked behind the wall, scroll and ink pot tipping over, spilling into the shape of a flower. Next, the mask maker. They exchange no words, just a bow. He slips her a carved fox mask, small enough to fit in her palm. She pockets it without looking. Then the paper seller's granddaughter. She's older now, still sketching, still smudged with ink and dreams. She runs up to Oei, eyes shining, and holds out a drawing one you instantly recognise the woman with no mouth, now standing in a field of cranes, all facing the wrong way. She grew up, the girl says proudly. Oei kneels. So did you? No lecture, no advice, just a nod and a gentle hand on the shoulder. You return home at dusk. The house is warm, for once. Hokusai is muttering about brushes and immortality. The cat has taken over the writing mat. Oei lights a single candle, opens a drawer, pulls out a scroll she hasn't touched in months. It's the one from the very beginning. A ghost, hair wild, eyes wide. You remember it clearly, the one she hid beneath a pile of her father's work. The one she feared was to her. She unrolls it slowly, looks at it. Then finally she signs it. Not Hokusai, not Taito, not a seal or a character or a clever disguise. Just Oei. She sits for a long time after that. You don't speak. Eventually, she says, I thought if I signed it, it would make it less real, like naming a dream. You nod, but now... She shrugs. Now I think dreams deserve names, too. That night, you place the scroll where it belongs on the wall, above the stove, where the warmth might keep it alive a little longer. Oei says nothing, but she doesn't look away. Later, you find a scrap of paper on the table. One final sketch, a lantern floating down a river, as before. But this time, inside the lantern, a brush, standing upright, lit. You smile. She's not asking to be remembered. She's showing you how the days grow longer. Not by much, but enough that you start waking to light instead of frost. The plum trees bud shyly. Children scream at puddles like they're monsters. Even the river seems to shake off its winter skin. Just a little. Oei doesn't say it aloud, but you feel it in her movements, quieter, slower, more deliberate. She's not tired. She's shifting. She spends her mornings making ink by hand now. Grinds it with care, measures water drop by drop, sometimes just for practice, sometimes just to smell it. You watch her fingertips stain slowly with each shade red like rust, black like morning, blue like unfinished thoughts. You ask her one morning, "What are you painting next?" She looks up. "I'm not." You pause. She smiles, not sad, not proud, just calm. I've said most of what I needed to. And for once, you believe her. That afternoon, she takes you to the riverbank. The same place where, months ago, she let scraps of painted paper drift downstream like forgotten leaves. She's carrying a wrapped bundle, not big, not ceremonial, just a scroll, tied neatly. "I want you to have this," she says. You hesitate. She insists. You unwrap it slowly. It's not a ghost, or a fox, or even a woman. It's a hand, holding a brush, just beginning to draw a circle unfinished, like a breath held at the edge of a thought. Signed Oei. "I made it before I knew how to finish anything," she says. "Now I know. Maybe not everything needs to be." You stare at it, overwhelmed by the stillness of it, the humility, the quiet daring. She continues. "Eyes on the water, I always thought my work would live if someone famous claimed it. Then I thought maybe it would live if no one claimed it. Now I think." She looks at you. Maybe it just lives. The wind picks up. The reeds hum like monks too tired to chant properly. Somewhere upstream, a bird lands awkwardly in the mud. You walk home without speaking. That night, you find her in the back room, finishing a small box made of lacquered wood. Nothing ornate, no secret compartments, just one drawer. Inside it, a single folded page and a brush wrapped in silk. On the page, a name is not a voice, a signature is not a soul, but they are bridges. She closes the drawer, sits beside the fire. The cat curls in her lap as if summoned. And for the first time in a long while, Oei leans back, without a brush in her hand. She doesn't look unfinished. She looks whole, like a story that was never meant to end, only to echo. Spring tiptoes in. One morning, you wake to the sound of a nightingale singing too early, as if it forgot its cue. The air smells like rain, and something new. Oei is already awake, sweeping, humming, brushing the last of winter's dust from the floorboards, like she's preparing the house for someone important. Except no one's coming. There's a quietness in her now that feels different. Not absence, not retreat, but a kind of fullness, like a jar no longer trying to overflow. She makes tea and drinks it slowly. You sit beside her, and neither of you speaks for a long time. Then she pulls something from her sleeve, a tiny folded packet bound with red thread. She hands it to you. Inside a sketch. No ink, just pencil, light, almost invisible. A self-portrait. Not stylized, not exaggerated, just her. Hair down, tired eyes, one hand holding a paintbrush, the other open, reaching not for glory or approval, but for balance. Signed Softly Oei. "I made it this morning," she says. "Didn't think I would, but the hand moved, so I let it." You ask if it's the last. She shrugs. It might be, or not. Then she folds it back up and hands it to you again. "I won't keep this one," she says. "That part's yours now." Later, she sits by the window and begins writing. Not painting, just writing. Small notes, fragments, unsent letters. One of them you catch before she tucks it away. "If I am remembered, let it be for the things I painted when no one asked." Outside, the blossoms begin to fall before they've even fully opened. She watches them like she's known them all her life. That evening, as the candle flickers low, she does something unexpected. She takes down her oldest brush, the one with the frayed end and cracked handle, and places it gently into the drawer beneath the tea shelf. Not thrown away, not hidden. Just rested. She closes it slowly, looks at you, and says, with a half smile, maybe the brush gets to sleep now, too. You nod. You understand. Then she leans back, the cat purring beside her, the last of the ink drying quietly on the rim of the stone. Outside, the wind carries her name in silence, and inside, the house breathes with the rhythm of someone who no longer needs to prove she lived. She simply was, and that was enough. The candle burns low, and your breath follows it slower now, softer. The air in the room is still, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, but held. You feel the quiet wrapping around you like a blanket stitched from every brushstroke, every whispered name, every scroll that was never signed but always spoke. Outside, the wind brushes gently at the walls, the cat stirs, shifts, and settles again. Even the inkstone seems to sleep now. And Oei, she is here, not on the page, not in the paint, but in the space between, the pause before the line, the silence between strokes. The woman who signed nothing and left everything. So rest. Now. You've wandered long enough. Through her ghosts, her foxes, her laughter, her lanterns. Close your eyes. Let your breath become the brush. Let your dreams become the paper. And let her name whispered at last fade softly into sleep. Like a candle going out,